Just over 2 years ago, anime fans were overcome by something they'd never considered possible. A 3D anime that seemed to capture everything appealing about 2D works. We voted it as Best Animation and Cinematography in the Reddit Anime Awards, Best 3D in the Crunchyroll Awards, Best Animation in CG World Magazine, and then we spent the next 2 years begging for a sequel. We didn't get that, but Orange is back anyways with BEASTARS, yet another 3D adaptation of a stylish manga that on the surface seemed impossible to adapt. Hello and welcome to the Canipa Effect. This is a studio spotlight on the team behind BEASTARS. BEASTARS feels like it should have everything against it. It's a 3D anime, it's a furry thing, and it takes a manga with a really unique style and changes it. It should be Public Enemy #1, but all it took is this one scene in the first trailer to win us all over. When it comes to 3D anime, we're never quite sure of what we actually want. For instance, we say that we don't want frame dropping, a technique where 3D anime won't run at a full 24 frames per second, but would instead remove frames to make it feel more like anime. However, we'll still praise anime that uses it, because it's only noticeable if it's implemented badly. Like with 2D shows, BEASTARS adjusts its frame rates depending on the motion. If the background is panning or there's VFX on screen, those look best with smoother motions, so that'd be on 1s, or rather, every frame is unique. But most of the show takes place on 2s, which is every second frame, or 12 FPS. This is normal for 2D anime as well. Occasionally the show will switch to 3s, which is 8 FPS, every third frame is unique. This works best for slow motion shots, as well as motions that feel very deliberate, for lack of a better word. And these can work in tandem. This shot of Legoshi walking across a background has him moving on 3s, but the background moving on 1s. It's not the technology, but the artist's hand that uses it. Orange is a studio founded by CG animator Eiji Inamoto, and he's been dropping frames like it's hot for a long time, starting with Zoids' Chaotic Century. At the time, CG was new to anime, and most believed that it should be full frame, but Inamoto saw that it just didn't fit with the 2D limited animation, so whenever he was given a shot to work on, he'd sneakily start cutting frames without asking for permission. 20 years later, and his views are now the standard. So in some ways, you could say he had a head start in perfecting anime CG, having worked as a CG animator through the early noughties before setting up his own company in 2004. Since then, he's micromanaged the hell out of the team, serving as CG director for as many projects as he can, and the result has always been spectacular. While they're known for their full 3D works now, in the 2010s, this team was known for their breathtaking mecha battles that overshadowed every other part of the show they were working on. But instead of continuing their mecha work as a main production studio, they've opted to challenge themselves with something new instead. In Land of the Lustrous, they had to adapt a unique manga by creating gem hair that each had its own unique refractive index, have emotive 2D faces attached to 3D characters, and make it all match up with backgrounds from an incredible ex-Ghibli artist. But clearly, that wasn't challenging enough, because with BEASTARS they said, hey, how about we now make a show where we have to create all the expressions in 3D, every character will have a unique shape, and the main character has detailed fur that needs to be lit perfectly from every single angle. And this might be a good time to be thinking, those poor artists. But in fact, Orange tries not to overwork their staff, shutting things down at the studio at the end of the day to basically say, come on, go home. So this means that it's important to employ efficient pipelines to overcome each of these challenges. In regards to creating expression in 3D, their approach has multiple layers. Back with Land of the Lustrous, they had 2D animator Nao Otsu do corrections on the characters' faces to perfect their expressions. In BEASTARS, Otsu returns, this time as character designer, who drew the 2D designs and expressions from the very start. So BEASTARS has a clear vision of how the characters are meant to express emotion, but for a show that's so focused on character dialogue, they opted to go a step further: facial motion capture. With this, they can enact the conversations of the show, and that can be used to make the 3D faces of the animals fit the expression. An animator can then go over that while retaining the raw human emotion. Likewise, BEASTARS is pre-scored, meaning that the animation is made to fit the performances of the actors rather than the other way around. Each character is unique, but the models are all generally based on Legoshi, and they're all humanoid, meaning that motion capture matches up quite well. Therefore, in terms of the voice acting, the motion capture, and facial expressions, BEASTARS is a show that is entirely based on the emotion of the performers. You can't talk about BEASTARS without mentioning fur. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome the furry community to the Canipa Effect. There's no joke here, it's just, you know, fursuits are so expensive. Maybe they'd have a couple dollars left over for the Canipa Effect Patreon. Just a thought. But with that aside, the fur in BEASTARS is a genuine artistic and technical achievement. Normally in 3D anime, when you light toon-shaded characters, you end up with these blocks of colour to determine where the light is directly hitting. But BEASTARS complicates things, and that's because each of the characters has a different amount of fur. Firstly, I should say that the character designer Nao Otsu used his dog as a reference for Legoshi's neck fur. This is Komaru, and he is a good boy. But because of that good boy fur, there's no way the shadows are going to be simple. They're going to be furry. This changes between each of the characters depending on the length of their fur. In reality, these models are a lot furrier than they appear, but that detail is generally only visible from side profile, with the toon shader obscuring the detail in front view. So our impressions of how furry each character is comes from the way the shader reflects shadows, and it was important that they could get it to match the look of Nao Otsu's 2D designs. Because when it comes to BEASTARS, Nao Otsu's work is incredibly important. 3D anime emulates the styles of 2D while taking advantage of the technology that allows them to go further. So Otsu's character designs weren't just used in the modelling process, but the shading and expression tests as well. Every time they take a step forward in regards to technology, they refer back to the 2D basis. But one specific part that Otsu's work couldn't serve as a reference is this scene in episode 3, where Haru is stroking Legoshi's chest. At this point, Legoshi truly gets three-dimensional, with every individual strand of fur having presence. In BEASTARS, Orange uses a plugin called Hair Farm for detailed fur shots, but this scene in particular was too much for it. Therefore, they employed a different plugin known as Tyflow, a particle simulator that can manage the movement of a huge amount of different objects, or in this case, strands of fur. So in this way, each individual strand is reacting naturally across Haru's hands. BEASTARS is an artistic and technical accomplishment, the result of one of the best animation studios in Japan constantly trying to challenge themselves. And this is entirely skipping over the creative storyboarding, which turns simple dialogue into tense split-screen moments, and a stop-motion opening created by Dwarf Studio, two things that we'll cover in the second part of this spotlight. BEASTARS is a great reminder that it's worth pushing yourself if you can, and it's worth trying new things. Even if everyone thinks that you're just good at one thing, try and branch out and surprise them. Who knows? You might end up surprising yourself as well. Thanks for watching the Canipa Effect. I'd like to give a special thanks to all of these viewers for supporting the channel. In particular, I'd like to thank Austin Hardwick, Chariot Wheel, Dedameat, Frogkun, Jacob Bosley, JR Pictures, Mike Tamborelli, My Own Mother, Nolan Soga, Shishi, and That Yuan Artist. If you'd like to support more animation spotlights, please visit patreon.com/thecanipa effect. Especially the furries. I know you can afford it.